Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Bingham, and I am the 9 times great-granddaughter of Sarah Wilds. I am a lay historian who does in-depth research regarding colonial witchcraft trials. I am also a co-founder of the Connecticut Witch Trial Exoneration Project, along with author Beth Caruso, Sarah Jack, Joshua Hutchinson, and Tony Griego. This video will define how the Puritans believed witchcraft to be in colonial times. The practice of Wicca, witchcraft, and pagan religions are vastly different today than what the Puritans believed witchcraft to be in the 1600s. Today, the witchcraft that is practiced is holistically centered in peace and love. The Puritan belief of witchcraft, well, that's an entirely different story. When the Great Migration started in 1630, headed by the Winthrop fleet, immigrants not only brought with them what they needed to sustain their lives, they brought with them their customs and their beliefs. The Puritans were a very pious religious group who wanted to start anew in the colonies to escape what they experienced as persecution. The Puritans believed that two worlds existed, and both worlds were very real to them, the physical world and the invisible world. However, these two worlds did not coexist side by side. These two worlds were intertwined in the Puritans' daily existence. As Professor John Demo stated in a 2015 interview for the Yale News, and I quote, "Everyone had things to say and stories to tell about witchcraft. It was a part of everyday life, no more, no less," end quote. What was the invisible world, and how was it manifested in the physical world? The Puritans believed that wherever God and goodness prevailed, so didn't Satan and evil. One could not be present without the other. Satan enticed people to sign their souls over to him, promising a more luxurious life. In the case of Abigail Hobbs, who was falsely convicted and who confessed to witchcraft, testified at Salem in 1692 that Satan promised her a silk mantle with a top knot and hood if she signed his book. Now, his book was not real. It existed only in the invisible world. People who were accused of witchcraft were believed to have a power to send their specter, which was also known as their image or their spirit, to manipulate nature, causing harm to another person, their animals, or their crops. For example, William Brown of Salisbury, Massachusetts, deposed in 1692 that his wife Elizabeth was traveling to the mill when suddenly Susanna Martin's image appeared. But just as quickly, Susanna's image disappeared. This stayed with Elizabeth as she believed that Susanna's bird-like familiar appeared to Elizabeth so close that its wings sharply pierced her stomach, causing Elizabeth great discomfort. A familiar was an animal that suckled the accused witch to gain powers and thus go forth to inflict bodily harm to their accuser. The familiar was only visible to a person's accuser. So no doubt something happened to cause pain in Elizabeth's stomach. The bird, however, was a part of the invisible world. Another case in Connecticut details the accusation and trial of Catherine Harrison, a wealthy widow, medical practitioner, and fortune teller who came from Wethersfield. Many charges against Catherine were due to the death of someone who sought her medical attention. In addition, Catherine was accused of sending her image to the bedroom of 20-year-old Mary Hale in the night. Mary was in bed when she saw Catherine's head on a dog-like creature pacing back and forth. It seems that Catherine was hated by many. Her property was vandalized, her swine were abused, and her cow suffered a severe wound at the hands of her enemies. Catherine was arrested and tried, but the jury could not convict. so she was held over in prison and awaited a new trial. Governor John Winthrop Jr. was not having any of it. John and his magistrates released Catherine from prison and placed her under house arrest. Residents were so angry that they petitioned the court and urged Catherine's immediate return to prison. So the magistrates in Connecticut did what the magistrates would do 23 years later in Salem. They drafted a letter to the ministers for advisement. The minister, whose handwriting was on the document to answer the magistrates, was Governor Winthrop's good friend and fellow alchemist, Gershom Bulkley. Gershom and his fellow ministers advised, just as the ministers in Salem did years later, that spectral evidence was enough to indict a person, but not enough to convict. The devil could take the shape and manipulate himself as the accused without consent of that person. In Connecticut, the 2 eyewitness rule, which was previously not entirely upheld, would now be strictly enforced. This meant that in any case moving forward, 2 or more people would have to witness the same event at the same time in the same place for a conviction to be valid. However, there was one other consideration. What if one witness saw an image that was manipulated by the devil, while the other witness saw that same image, which was allegedly sent with permission of the accused? So now spectral evidence was being undermined, but it wasn't discredited, thanks to the political savvy of Governor Winthrop. Catherine Harrison was set free on the condition that she leave Wethersfield for her own safety, as well as to appease her neighbors. In August of 1692, the magistrates of Salem reached out to area ministers seeking the advice regarding the use of spectral evidence as part of the temporary court set up known as the Court of Oyer and Terminer. Reverend Cotton Mather, who is believed to have authored this letter, advised the same as Gershom Bulkley did years ago. The same conclusion was drawn. Spectral evidence was no longer admissible. Once spectral evidence was discontinued in Salem, the execution stopped and the Court of Oyer and Terminer was dismantled. However, witchcraft cases were still being tried under the new Superior Court of Judicature beginning in January of 1693 and continued through May of that same year. The information provided in this video should now finally dispel the belief that the peaceful Wiccan religion and other pagan religions and traditions stemmed from the Puritan view of witchcraft. They don't. There were no witches in the colonies. Everyone accused of the capital crime of witchcraft was wrongfully accused, even those who confessed. No one was guilty of what was then to be believed as witchcraft in the colonies. Thank you.